Interstate 90. Yeah! Alright, here it is, folks. It's the big one, longest interstate in the country. Today, we are just talking about the western section from Seattle through Washington, Idaho, and Montana, and Wyoming. So we will be getting on with the rest of 90 in future episodes, probably 3 episodes, because it's just too long for 2. Alright, so we see I-90's path. The map for the path is pretty much the map of the whole country, because we see it goes very far, over 3,000 miles. It is quite a road, and I'm excited to talk about it. You're watching Control City Freak. This is the YouTube channel where we talk about interstate highways and the places that they're signed to go to. If you dig this kind of content, why not give us a like? And if you really are into it, why not subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. Woohoo. Alright, first we are going to talk about eastbound I-90, western. I-90 begins here in Seattle, right near the stadiums. You see we're in the shadow of the Seahawks home, the site of the former Kingdome. We see where there's a sign for 90 and 5, use right 2 lanes. We get on that ramp and we are right next to the Mariners Park here as we head up to this ramp, and at the top there's a stoplight and you turn left and boom, you're on I-90. Here's what it looks like. We have a 90 reassurance shield right there, and we are going to be meeting I-5 right from the jump. So we see 5 North Vancouver, BC, 5 South Portland. As we move over, we get a great view of the Seahawks Stadium here, along with the Seattle skyline. So quite lovely. Looks a lot better than the old Kingdome used to. Seen a game there, and whew. 5 South Portland right here. And after that we get a left exit for 5 North Vancouver, BC. So solid there. Here's a look at the 5 looking south as the 5 moves its way onto Tacoma and Portland and Los Angeles and Tijuana. Interchanges from 5 make up kind of the through line of I-90, so the original part of I-90 is kind of merging with the I-5 traffic right here. And we see we are on 90 East Spokane, all lanes, and we are on Spokane the whole way pretty much. We cross the floating bridge over Lake Washington, so we see Bellevue, Washington there in the distance. And now we're meeting the 405 for Everett and Renton. Makes sense here, Everett, fairly major kind of Seattle satellite city, and we're not signing Tacoma because you would have just stayed on 5 if you were going to Tacoma, so we're getting Renton here. And at random interchanges we get 90 West Seattle, 90 East Spokane. Here's an early mileage sign on I-90. We get Snoqualmie Pass in 25, Ellensburg 82, Spokane 250. Perfectly done there. And we head into the mountains, the Cascades here, pretty much right as soon as we get out of Seattle. And we've got this Ellensburg travel time digital sign, so that's cool. This is kind of what Snoqualmie Pass looked like one of the times I drove across it on the famed trip with me and 2 buddies. It was horrible weather and we were stuck in a traffic jam on the pass for a good couple of hours. Here we are at actual Snoqualmie Pass at the summit, and you can see up ahead this still says 90 East Spokane. This county line I would assume is the exact peak of Snoqualmie Pass. Usually they have county lines at some of the highest points in Washington from what I understand, and we do see the exit here for Summit. Now we head down the mountain into central and eastern Washington. Here's another snow view from Google Street View from a couple years ago, and we've got the Snoqualmie River right there next to us. Lovely views on this road. It is a beautiful road. Kind of gives I-70 in Colorado a run for its money, although that road is quite a bit higher and you're in the mountains for a longer time than you are here on 90 in Washington. At this random interchange we get 90 East Ellensburg for some reason. I don't know why they have that there. Every other sign I saw was Spokane. We've got this one lone Ellensburg sign. And we continue down the mountain. We're almost to the bottom here. And this is pretty shocking. This is only a few miles past the last picture I showed you, and it's desert now, and we are 16 miles away from Ellensburg. We see we're getting 90 East Spokane, and 82 is signed for Yakima. And we cross the Columbia River. If it's not the most scenic river in the whole country, I don't know what is, but it looks awesome every time we see it. And at random interchanges, we are still on 90 East Spokane. And here we pass through the town of Moses Lake and the Lake of Moses Lake, or Lake Moses, one of those two, I forget now. We meet 395, which is signed south for Ritzville and Pasco Tri-Cities. We're only getting South 395 because we are going to be concurrent with North 395 up until Spokane. And here we are in Spokane, where we now get 90 East Coeur d'Alene, a city in Idaho that is very scenic, probably popular with tourists, so I would say it's a fine control city. Easily the biggest city in Idaho. We pass through a 90 as well. We cross this river and enter Idaho, but this is actually a false border. This river does not make up the border between Washington and Idaho. It just happens to cross the border at the same time as I-90. And in Idaho, we get Coeur d'Alene as the only control city here. Idaho usually has two. Here we meet US 95, the prominent road of Idaho. It's the only road to connect northern and southern Idaho without leaving the state. In Coeur d'Alene, we get 90 East Kellogg, Missoula. So now that there's an out-of-state control city, suddenly there's in-state secondaries that are important enough to sign, according to Idaho. Beautiful views as we drive along this area of I-90 in Idaho. Actually, throughout Idaho, I-90 is just spectacular. And we get a mileage sign here. We see Kellogg 33 and Missoula 161. We pass by Lake Coeur d'Alene in this area. Like I say, very beautiful looking lake, very beautiful looking area in general. But now we are getting just Kellogg as our control city at random interchanges instead of Kellogg, Missoula. So this I don't care for at all. Kellogg is not a big place. Here we are in Kellogg. You see all this urban sprawl here. Yes, we now get 90 East, Wallace, and Missoula. So Wallace, I think, is even smaller, but at least we do get Missoula up there. And we continue, we get Missoula 129, Wallace just 10 miles away now. Here is Wallace. This is pretty much the entire town, or roughly half the town. So not a very big place, but it does look like a pretty town from what we can see here. We're in the Bitterroot Mountains, and we are going to Lookout Pass. This is the highest point of I-90 so far, and right at that pass, we see we are crossing into Montana. Heading down the mountain, we get Missoula 104, Butte 225, so we're getting a second control city already after Missoula. And at random interchanges, it is just Missoula that is signed, nothing else along the way. Here we're passing by the Clark Fork River, which we will follow and cross a few times, and it will actually lead right into Missoula. Downtown Missoula, where we're going to be meeting US 12, 12 East will follow us. And outside of Missoula, we see it is 90 East for Butte and 90 West for Missoula, because we're just past Missoula, so no big spoiler there. This is pretty cool. So now we're getting Helena 107, Butte 112, and that is because the faster way to Helena is not to go through Butte, it's to take US 12, and as we are on US 12 right now, makes sense. And here is where US 12 splits east for Helena, and 90 continues on for Butte. We meet I-15 outside of Butte, so 15 and 90 are assigned for Butte together. 15 south, Dillon and Idaho Falls. I don't love that Dillon there. It's okay as long as they have the Idaho Falls, and I guess not like Idaho Falls is a huge place, but Montana being a little provincial, throwing Dillon up there. In Butte now we get 115 City Center, and that is a tiny 3-digit interstate. Really doesn't even have an exit, almost isn't even an on-ramp. I don't know if I'd even consider an on-ramp style 3DI. It's just so small. On the other side of Butte, 90 and 15 are going to split, so 15 north Helena and 90 east for Billings. Little surprising that we skip Bozeman. Bozeman's growth has been substantial, but I guess also fairly recent. It is quite a big town by Montana standards, so I'm a little surprised that we skip over it. At random interchanges, it is just Billings that is signed here. We're up in the Rocky Mountains, so now we cross the highest point of I-90 on its entire length. And we see Bozeman 71, Billings 213 miles away. Beautiful scenery here as we drive down the mountains toward Bozeman, and we exit at 191 South Main Street for Bozeman. Bozeman is here. I've done this exit before. My friends and I were trying to drive back to Kansas, and Bozeman Pass was closed due to a snowstorm, so we stayed in Bozeman, and it was cool. And now we head on to the aforementioned Bozeman Pass. On the other side of these mountains, we get US 89 South in Livingston, and it is signed for Yellowstone National Park. Now we've got Junction US 89, that's North 89, because we're concurrent with it, 7 miles away. Big Timber, and then finally Billings. We cross the Yellowstone River, and 90 will kind of follow the Yellowstone River throughout eastern Montana, and 94 will pick that up when 94 is spawned. Speaking of 94 is spawned, here is I-94 leaving I-90 for the first of, I believe, 6 times. They meet together a lot, are concurrent a lot, and this is the start or end of I-94 right here. 90 East Sheridan. We'll talk about that later. And here we get Hardin 40, Little Bighorn Battlefield 55, Sheridan 124. So Sheridan being signed from over 100 miles away, and it's like 10,000 people, not very widely known, not a major junction of any type. So I can't agree with signing Sheridan. They'd have to have something better they could do. Casper, maybe? Cheyenne? Denver? At random interchanges, it is just Sheridan that is signed. Here we meet 212, and it is signed for Little Bighorn Battlefield. This is also the faster way for Rapid City traffic. If you want to go to Rapid City or further east on 90, you're better off going off here rather than staying on 90 itself. And welcome to Wyoming. I feel like this picture in the Welcome to Wyoming sign was taken right here almost, because it just blends in. It's almost hard to see. And in Wyoming, no surprise, Sheridan is the only listed control city. Coming close to Sheridan, so now we get Sheridan 13, Buffalo 49, Gillette 115. Not the best choices there. You could definitely get rid of Buffalo because there's not really much there. It's just I-25. You could have Sheridan, Casper, Gillette here. And here we meet 5th Street, and we see the massive sprawl of Sheridan. In Sheridan, we are signed for 90 East Buffalo, which again, significant for being an interstate junction, but other than that, really nothing to it. And now we're getting Buffalo, Gillette, Casper. That's a cool sign because Buffalo is where we meet 25, Gillette is where I-90 will go, and Casper is where I-25 will go. So I do like that sign. And we're meeting 90, yeah, we get Gillette and Casper. I don't know if I love this Gillette thing though. I know it's, third biggest city in Wyoming, but you guys know I don't care about rankings in states or whatever. Third biggest city in Wyoming is still like 30,000 people. Casper is the second biggest, and it's nearly twice the size of Gillette and much, much more famous. So I would probably prefer to see Rapid City here. But at random interchanges, we still get 90 East Gillette. And now we're getting Gillette 66 Moorcroft 94. Ugh, I don't like the looks of that. This is pretty weird. We have this dirt road off-ramp off of I-90. So not often you see a dirt road intersection, and there's no exit signs for it or anything either. Here's what it looks like from above. So we see on both sides we have just a dirt road leaving I-90. If you follow the road that goes off that interchange, you end up at this. I don't know if this is some kind of mine or what they've got going on here, if it's Area 52. Who knows what's going on with all this. We can see that road again from I-90, and we see there's a gate there, so if you were to get off on the dirt road, you can't just turn and go down this random road in the middle of nowhere. So where does it go? In Gillette now we get 90 East Moorcroft. So, very small place. No reason for that to be a control city of any kind. Wyoming being super provincial here. And look at this. Moorcroft, Sundance, Newcastle. This is making my head hurt. What's up with these places? Sundance, the Sundance Kid is from Sundance. So that's its only sort of claim to fame. It's being referred to in a movie as a character's nickname, but the town itself is tiny. And we do get 90 East Sundance here, so we finally do get 90 East Spearfish, so they do acknowledge that South Dakota exists. So that's nice. Now we've got Spearfish 31, Rapid City 76. So Rapid City, by far the biggest city in this part of the country, only 76 miles away, and this is our first mention of it. So I don't know, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And we get Welcome to South Dakota, but we're going to be getting to that on a different episode. So we're going to turn around and we will head westbound on Western I-90. So we see the Welcome to Wyoming sign once again. It stands out a little bit more here, but it still does kind of fit into that background. That's pretty interesting. And now we're getting Sundance, Moorcroft, and Gillette. So Gillette is on the bottom line from the start in I-90 in Wyoming. This is maybe the most ridiculous sign I've ever seen. So now at random interchanges, we don't get Gillette, we get West Sundance, and we get East Beulah. I'm not looking up how to say it. I don't care. I looked up what the population is. It's 72! 72 people is our eastbound control city. Nobody's going there. Signed South Dakota. Wyoming. It is mostly signed for Gillette on the way, though. Not too much Sundance or whatever. Mostly Gillette on the way. And here we are meeting the business loop for Gillette. And in Gillette, it is East Moorcroft and West for Buffalo. So signing Buffalo here, I know, again, interstate junction, we talked about this earlier. It's a useless interstate junction for 90 westbound traffic. Nobody is going to go from Gillette to Buffalo and then to Casper. If you're going to go to Casper, there's a different way. If you're going to go to Cheyenne, there's a much faster way. The route through Buffalo is 40 minutes longer than the other way to get to Laramie, and like an hour longer to get to Cheyenne. So why sign Buffalo? It's like 2,000 people. I mean, sign Sheridan if you have to, but you should just sign Billings here. And we get Buffalo 67, Sheridan 101. Not a lot out here in this part of northern Wyoming. This is a pretty typical view of what we see on this road here. Here we meet I-25, sign south for Casper, and we get West 90, Sheridan. Again, that should be Billings, not Sheridan. Billings isn't that far away from this point. Billings is the way to go. Here's our actual split. South 25 Casper, West 90 Sheridan. US 87 going both ways. You can tell they definitely get some severe weather in these parts. We get 90 closed, return to Buffalo when flashing, and then just a little bit ahead, there are some gates they can pull down to stop you from continuing on 90. Sheridan, 33 miles away, so why would you possibly sign anything beyond it? Ugh. Even though when we were 33 miles away from it going the other way, we were signing Buffalo and Casper and stuff. So annoying, so provincial. And here is a look at Sheridan. Ah, Sheridan. Fine city, I'm sure, but shouldn't be signed the way they sign it. Amazingly, in Sheridan, we do get 90 West Billings. I thought they'd find some, random 3-person town to be our control city from here, but we do get Billings, so that's good. We're meeting US 14. This is a pretty major junction in northern Wyoming, and basically the last junction of any circumstance in Wyoming. So we get 90 West for Billings, and 14 is going to be our exit for Yellowstone and Teton National Parks. Lodgegrass 32, Billings 112. Lodgegrass is in Montana. And we enter Montana, and wow, it's hard to see their sign with their backdrop. It looks pretty similar too. So some of these signs, these western states, they look cool, but they put so much color and art into it that it's hard to make out when seeing it. Somehow, I don't know, West Virginia does it better. They have a similar kind of thing, but it pops. And at random interchanges here, we get Billings and Sheridan. We meet I-94, and I-94 is signed east for Bismarck, and 90 is getting West Billings, because we actually aren't quite to Billings yet, so that does make sense. Here's a look at downtown Billings, by far the most robust skyline in all of Montana. Got the 2 tallest buildings in Montana right here. I just saw this on Google Street View when I was making this video. A turbine blade truck. Pretty cool, hauling this giant turbine blade. And now we are in West 90 Butte. So from Billings, we do West 90 Butte as well. No Bozeman, which is interesting because Bozeman is actually considerably larger than Butte now. So we're assigning a city that's further away and smaller. I know it's only recent that Bozeman's been bigger, but I do think this should probably be updated to add Bozeman now. Bozeman isn't even a secondary here. We're getting Laurel, Columbus, and Butte. If nothing else, Bozeman should always be the second line city if they're going to have Butte on the third line. And at random interchanges in Billings, we get 2 Junction I-94 and Sheridan, and Butte the other way. I should note that in a lot of parts in Montana, the speed limit is 80 miles an hour. I happen to be one of the ones who was out there. I drove this in 1998 when the speed limit was reasonable and proper or something like that. So that was fun. And here we go, Junction US 89, Livingston, and Butte. So even this close to Bozeman is still not the secondary control city. And here we are in the same area. I just thought this was cool. This was from 2007 Street View, but because of the quality of 2007 Street View, makes it look like it's a painting. It's pretty awesome looking here, I'd have to say. And here is a scenic viewpoint and a historic point that you can check out at Bozeman Pass as we head toward Bozeman. We get Main Street again, and we get an overhead sign for 90 West Butte here in Bozeman. And we skipped ahead to the Butte area, so now we get 15 North Helena and South 15, West 90 for Butte. At the start of 115, we get West 115, and we see for Dillon and Missoula. So they're going with Dillon instead of Idaho Falls at this for I-15, so I don't care for that at all. And now 15 and 90 split, so we get West 90 Missoula and 15 South for Dillon seems partially greened out, and Idaho Falls. Next exit here, we're getting the Old Montana Prison Museum, which I've been to before, and it was pretty cool. I quite enjoyed it. We're meeting US 12 again, and we get West 90 Missoula. In Missoula, it is signed for 90 West Coeur d'Alene. And on mileage signs, we get Frenchtown and Coeur d'Alene, so makes sense to have Coeur d'Alene as the control city coming out of Missoula, in my opinion here. I could see an argument for skipping straight to Spokane, but Coeur d'Alene in there is fine. And welcome to Idaho. We are up on that mountain pass again at Lookout Pass, so it is awesome as we drive into Idaho. Great mountains. We see I-90 has a name in Idaho, the Captain John... I don't want to say it wrong, Highway. And we see Coeur d'Alene is our only listed control city. So interesting, Idaho. When it was going the other way, you would name random places and Missoula. But when it's Coeur d'Alene, you're fine with going with just Coeur d'Alene. So you know you're provincial when. And here's another look at Lake Coeur d'Alene. Quite beautiful here. In downtown Coeur d'Alene, we get 90 West Post Falls and Spokane. Can't just do Spokane. Oh, God forbid. Even though it's like 30 miles away or something. Have to add another city in Idaho there. And we see Post Falls 3, Spokane 32. It's kind of just development all the way from Coeur d'Alene to Spokane, though. It's kind of one big series of development. Welcome to Washington. We head back into Washington State, and we see it is signed 90 West Spokane right from the jump in Washington State. Here's a look at downtown Spokane from I-90, so pretty good view of the city here. And at this interchange, we're getting 90 West Spokane Airport, and Seattle kind of as a secondary, East Spokane and City Center, so very Spokane-centric here. And this is weird. On US 2, the exit from the airport, we get 90 East Spokane, 90 West Ritzville. Ritzville? Why Ritzville? That's like such a small place. If you're gonna have something that's not Seattle, which you shouldn't, why would you pick Ritzville? But at every other sign we ever see, it is 90 West Seattle, so there's no more Ritzville signs again after that. Very weird. Ritzville. And we get Sprague 27, Seattle 270. So it's not a 3-city sign with Ritzville on there. We're doing Sprague as the secondary, which is before Ritzville. But Ritzville's not worth mentioning here. Why 90 Ritzville? It's so weird. I feel like sometimes they're just doing this stuff to mess with me specifically. So as per normal in Sprague, we get 90 East Spokane, 90 West Seattle. No mention of Ritzville. And Ritzville becomes the secondary control city once we are 22 miles away from it. And Seattle, 242. Here's our Ritzville exit, 395, and it's also where 395 leaves this interstate and heads on to Pasco and the Tri-Cities. We come up to the Columbia River, and it's got a gorge, as it often seems to do. And Columbia River, it's got to be the GOAT, river-wise. Here's a scenic view area of the Columbia River. I don't know why Street View couldn't have driven to the edge of this parking lot to do this. They have to just kind of drive right to the front of the parking lot. Very weird, but cool enough. And we get a sweeping view of the bridge we will soon be going over. And we see that bridge is really tall at one end and basically flat at the other end. And the scenic vista of the Columbia River. This exit right before crossing the Columbia River, if you can get off at Washington 26, I recommend getting off at this spot just for this off-ramp where you go right against the river and you have these mountains in the background. Looks beautiful. And now we will cross the Columbia River again, and you can see we are quite high above it at this point. And at the other end of the Columbia River, we are only a few feet above it. Pretty interesting. We're going to be meeting I-82 again, 82 East Yakima. So that makes sense. On 82, you get 90 West Seattle, either lane, 90 East Spokane, next right. And now we've got Seattle, 105 miles away. And we head right into the mountains, so things are going to look really pretty for the remainder of I-90. Here we head into Snoqualmie Pass once again, so quite impressive here. Here's the exit for Highway 18, Auburn, and this is also the shortcut to Tacoma. I used to live in Tacoma, so I've taken this a few times. I always felt like Tacoma should be on this sign too, because it is the way to Tacoma, and more people are going to Tacoma than Auburn. And here at exit 18, we are in Issaquah, so this is kind of the beginning of the Seattle suburban sprawl, but we're still a little bit in the mountains heading down. And we meet the 405 again, signed again for Renton and Everett. So this time, I don't get it. If you're going to sign Everett, then you should be signing Tacoma, because those are kind of like equally places. If you're going to sign Renton, then you should sign, like Bothell or some other, closer in suburb to Seattle. I don't get the incongruency here. Awesome view as we cross Lake Washington. So we get to see Seattle right ahead and the Seattle skyline to the right. And right after we get into Seattle, we go into a tunnel. Seattle, portal to the Pacific, as we have a portal to Seattle right here. We are meeting I-5, and just like before, we have left and right exits. So left for south to Portland and right for Vancouver, BC. And E. Martinez Drive 4th Avenue South, 1 mile is straight ahead. E. Martinez there is Edgar Martinez, the old DH for the Mariners, so that's cool that he's got a street. Here's a look at the Seattle skyline, and I can't imagine what it would cost to keep your stuff in that public storage this close to downtown Seattle. That's got to be expensive. 90 here ends up on the lower deck as we cross I-5. It ends up being a double-decker thing here. And we have our exit for E. Martinez Drive, which will take you to the Mariners Stadium. And 90 is considered to the right here, and we see it's for City Center and Lumen Field. If you were to get on Martinez Drive on that ramp, you've got a fantastic view of the Mariners home stadium here. It looks quite nice. And going the other way, we've got the Seahawks. So I do love the stadium situation in Seattle. It's really cool how they're both very close to downtown. They're both right there. Seattle and Baltimore have a similar thing going on with that. And this will be the end of I-90, this stoplight where you can turn left for downtown or right for the stadium. All right, let's talk about Todd's the way it should be for this part of I-90. I'm gonna say eastbound, it should be Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, Missoula, Bozeman, Billings, Rapid City right after Billings, then Casper once we hit 212 because 212 is the faster way to Rapid City, and then Rapid City once again after we meet I-25. Casper the bigger draw than Gillette, so I would say that. Westbound, a little simpler here. I would say Billings, then Bozeman, the one they leave out, then Missoula, Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, and Seattle. All right, thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. There's lots and lots more I-90 stuff coming, but I think we are going to do a Todd ranks the DOTs next week and then come back and do more 90 after that. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Todd, and keep on trucking.